Alrighty, Mr. Gatekeeper here with Gatekeeper Amps. I'm a fellow that loves RF amplifiers, wide-banded RF amplifiers, and these devices pull a lot of current, DC current. So, one thing that makes things a lot easier and helpful here around the shop here or in the mobile or wherever are Anderson connectors or quick disconnects in any sort of way or fashion. Now I know a lot of people I've came across are not familiar with these connectors, and I've been wanting to make a video for some time now to make it easier to understand how to use them and how to install them and how to reuse them as well. And so I want to do that now, because I can remember when I first started off with these things, I didn't even know what way they go in the connector. And I remember in the beginning I was about to quit and give up on them, and I just didn't understand how they snap into the connector. So first off, I want to cover that. But first, Anderson connectors or Anderson type connectors. Okay, so Anderson was one of the first companies to actually come up with this idea, and it was mainly used in high current demands like welding machines, such stuff like that. Anything that needs to pull high amounts of current. And so they come with pretty much, these are rated at a 600 volt and down rating. They come in all sizes and current packages, and basically it's just the size of how they call the fingers. They kind of look like little fingers, but basically these right here is where your wire solders into. Okay, all right, I'm gonna pull one of these big boys out right here because it'll be a little easier to see on the camera here. Okay, now, sorry about that. Of course, your wire goes into here. Okay. Now, if you take, I'm gonna try to be real quick with this because a lot of people already know this. I just might want to see how to install them. Come on now, focus. All right. This portion of the finger right here is the portion that's going to be snapping in to the other finger when you plug it in. Like this. So these are a surface mount type of connector, or surface mount. Right there. They're going to be making contact like that, real tight. And that's the way they make contact. Okay, now here's the part I had confused when I first started. How do they plug into the connector and fingers? Take a look at this little lip. See that little lip right there? That is the way that they go into the connector. Always remember, this little lip faced down. This lip face down like this, and then plugs into the connector, and when you push it down, it's going to snap. And if you can just use a little common sense, you'll see that the piece of metal right here, once you push it in, it's going to snap, and it's in that little metal part right there at the end is going to hold it in. I don't know what you call that technically. That part of the connector is going to hold it in. Okay, and this thing just don't want to focus for nothing. So if you keep pushing it in, you'll hear that snap, and it snapped in. So one more time, the little lip, because you'll notice right here there's no lip. Little lip, plug in, snap, plug in, snap. And you'll see that on every single one of these type of connectors, no matter how big or small they are. for example, I ain't got no tripod here. We'll take a look at this very, very small, which is the smallest in this type of series, the 50 amp. All right, see the little lip? So that little lip will go in this, see, lip would go in this direction. I'm sitting here looking through the camera. All right, so now that we got that over with, as you can see, they come in all types of colors, and the way that Anderson and other companies do this so they can make more of your money, they also do it, I guess, for safety reasons. If you need it, if you make sure you don't want two of the same plugs being plugged into another plug by accident, it could be a safety issue too. 9 times out of 10, or 8 times out of 10, I guess you can say, the same colors are only going to plug into each other, but different colors won't. 8 times out of 10, because I've noticed the black and the grays, they both plug into each other. But like I said, this is also a safety reason too. If you have multiple things around and you don't want, you know, there could be a problem. This is kind of a safety issue for yourself. Like, for example, you could be running one plug and using it for a ground, and the other plug could be a positive, but you want to put different colors on them so they couldn't be accidentally plugged into each other, which is understandable. All right, and like I said, you got different style. Like this right here is not Anderson, and like this right here is not Anderson, but it's cheaper. And then you've also have what you call Anderson power poles, which is what I'm going to be working with today. Anderson power poles are really neat because you can do them separately, or you can sit here, hold on, let me put the camera down real quick, like this, or you can put 4 together, or 3 together, or whatever. And the cool thing about these type of power poles, they use the same fingers as a regular Anderson. And these right here are 175 amp fingers right here, 175 amp, okay? This thing just does not want to focus. And of course, like I said, see the lip? They're going to plug in this direction until you hear it snap. Alright, so now that I've showed different types, you even got really, really small ones here. Those are very, very small ones for small applications, and so on. So, there's 2 different ways you can put Anderson connectors on your wires. The first way is crimping. Me personally, I'm not a favor of that way. And the reason why, because if I crimp them, I can't reuse them easily at all. I would have to cut the wires, and, you know, a lot of hassle. If I crimp them, I can't reuse them. It's just a lot harder to reuse them. But if I solder them, then I can reuse these fingers for the rest of their lives, as long as I don't get solder all over the finger, you know, the part where it plugs in and all that type of stuff. I can reuse it forever. I have some Anderson connectors here, like this connector right here, that I've had for about 15 to 16 years, and I have probably reused those fingers at least 6, 7, 8 times, and they're still working. And as you can see, I have connectors. I've made, you know, converters of 175 to 50. I've got connectors on everything. I got a bag full of different type of connectors. I got stuff that, you know, that did a change of a gray to a red, or a gray to a blue, anything to make it quicker, because I get a lot of things that comes in here that has different connectors on it, and I need to be ready to just plug in instead of having to make something. You're just going to take up more time. Okay, so like I said, the one that I favor is soldering. So what you'll need to do that with is a torch. I'm just going to show you the way that I've always done it. You can form your own way. But I'm going to show you one of the most important parts you just need to keep in mind. Okay, I like to use a torch and vice grips, and these vice grips are to hold the finger while I'm torching it. Okay, you can use small torches like, I'm dropping everything. You can use small torches like this on the smaller connectors, like the 50s, if you wish. Okay. Next, it works very, very, very well, is liquid flux. Okay, this right here is, I got off eBay, CL-flux. Okay, because one of the most important things that you need to remember is you have to pre-tin or pre-solder your wire connections. Okay, for example, right here, you have to pre-solder your wire connections. Without doing this, when you stick bare wire that has not been pre-soldered in the finger to go ahead and solder, you have an extra step that has to happen all at once. Then your wires have to become pre-tinned or pre-soldered in the cup, and then they have to be bonded to the cup. And sometimes, 9 times out of 10, if you don't leave that wire in there long enough, then this process aren't going to take as well, and you're going to have wire where all the strands have not bonded to the solder, which then bonds to the cup of the finger. Or you'd have to leave this in so long to make sure that happens that your insulation on your wire burns up, you know, which ain't a big deal. You can put heat shrink on it and all, but trust me, this right here is a lot easier to do. I mean, you could almost, since this is already tin like this, you could almost, if this wire was thick enough, you could almost just put this in the finger and heat the finger up to where you know that it's hot enough. And the way that you can tell that it's hot enough is you take a little thin piece of solder and just touch the thin piece of solder while this is sitting in the cup, in the finger, and see if the very top of this wire is melting the solder. If the very top of this wire is melting the solder, that means the whole thing is hot enough and it's bonding. And you can almost put it in that cup, heat the cup up really, really well, and you'll be done. But I don't do that. I like to be extra safe and to add more solder to it, just to be safe, to make sure that it's completely filled up with solder to the top. And this is something that you'll have to practice a little bit, because it ain't hard to have the flux come up and overfill onto the finger and this and that, which ain't a big deal. That's the next thing I was going to add over here is acetone. Acetone or goof off are really two good things to remove flux. Some of the best. All right. And another thing, so you don't have to use so much of your small solder, it's good to have some thick solder laying around. And I'll tell you what too, you don't want a lot of flux burning and catching on fire and stuff while you're sitting there doing it. All you need is a little bit of flux and some thick solder that doesn't have, now this solder does have a little rosin core in it, but if you have just solder with no rosin core, just straight silver solder or something like that, all you need is just a little bit of flux to put into the bottom of the finger, and then use that type of solder. And then you won't waste a lot of solder filling these cups up. So, the first thing, and before I forget, this right here is a crimper. Okay, you can pretty much kind of tell how it would work. I can't probably do it with one hand, but you would put the wire into the cup, to your finger, put it up under here and set it on a good solid surface, and basically hit it with a hammer or something really, really hard that's going to crimp that connector. And plus you have some compression crimps or hydraulic crimps that you can use. But I'm going to be covering the solder style, because what I need to do is I need to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fingers on these wires. and I'm going to be using these 175 amp power poles. And another thing I've noticed too, which makes me feel better, is I like to at least use a connector that has at least double than the amount of current that I need. For example, these devices right here are going to pull no more than about 60 or 70 amps of current. If you take 70 times 2, that's 140. So these are 175. So we're good. That's just one of my personal things I like to do. Okay, so if I had something that was going to be pulling, let's say 150 amps of current, then I'll go over to this connector, because this right here is a 350. This is a 350, 350 amps. I haven't actually contacted Anderson to ask them, but they rate at 600 volts, 350 amps. Now, are they trying to say this can handle 350 amps at 600 volts? That doesn't sound likely. That's killer. That's killer current at 600 volts. I hadn't actually asked them. I've checked out the data sheets too. It's not 100% clear, but I'll just look at them like this right here. This is 350 amps of current. Okay, so to make me feel better, I'd like to, look at that, I'm dropping stuff right on the video. To make me feel better, I would like to only use this connector for maybe up to 200 amps, just to make me feel better. It gives you a little bit extra. You don't ever want to max something out to where this thing's blistering hot, and you're now losing current flow because you don't have a connector that's big enough. Okay, so like on the 50s, I like to use these for something that's going to be pulling up to maybe 25, 30 amps. That's just my personal opinion. All right, next in line, I'm going to try to hurry up through this. Next in line, you want to make sure that your wire that you've already pre-soldered and pre-tinned. I know this right here can be a timely process if you don't have a soldering iron hot enough. It's all about how hot your soldering iron is and you know, all that good stuff. But the liquid flux, okay, this is the only part I won't be doing on the camera. The liquid flux is what I use, and I just put the liquid flux on the wire and just kind of go around and just make sure that it's you know, soaked up really well after I've twisted together with the liquid flux. And then it's good to use something like something like this contraption right here, second hands or extra hands, to hold your wire really well, and so you won't put indentions in your wire. You can wrap a little bit of tape or something, non-adhesive tape, or something, so it won't be putting indentions in a wire when it heats up, so that you can put your iron on this wire and put some pressure on it, so you can actually get a good heat transfer. Because just having your iron sit on it like this right here, it's going to take a while to get that, unless you got a super hot iron. This is a 60 watt iron, and I used this iron with these with no problem. Had them all done in about maybe 15-20 minutes last night. So next, you want to make sure that the wire is going to be going into your cup with ease. And if you can tell, this one is not going in. So I'm going to have to shave and shape up this wire a little bit so that it will go in. So that's not going in. Let's try this one. That one's not going in either. And it could just be because it has a little curve to it or something. Let's try this one. This one looks like it will go in. Yep. So this one went in just fine. So that's good. As you can see, the wire is so thick. And so you can also buy these fingers at different thicknesses too. But this wire is so thick, I'm not going to have much room in there to even get any solder in there. And that's not a bad thing at all. Because once I heat this thing up, it's almost going to be good to go. I don't even have to add any solder at all. But it's good to add a little bit of solder, and just to make sure that this cup is completely full of solder. And another thing, I like to leave a little bit of wire above the finger, okay, a little bit of wire, so that I can hit it with solder and tap it off there at the end. And plus, so this insulation won't be so close to it that it starts melting onto your finger and everything. Because you want to think about also reusing this in the future. So this is the second one, plugs in just fine. So I'm gonna go through all of them like that and see which ones I'm gonna need to shape up. And you can be creative on how to shape. This one's gonna need it shaped up. I just pretty much use my Dremel and just, you know, pick whichever attachment works best for you. I start off with a grinding wheel. I know it might not be the most efficient way to do it, but I just kind of I don't use the actual cutting part of the wheel. I'm using this part of it. Just kind of shape it up like that. But of course, I'm going to lay a towel over here and make sure I don't get any shavings on that. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. Is let me take a pause, get these things shaved up, and then we'll be ready to fire this torch up and get these things soldered. So I'll be back. Alrighty. Now this is the device right here that I'm going to be putting the fingers, the wires on that's connected to this device, excuse me. And as you can see, I've basically got the device just sitting on this, just weighting it down so it's not going to be moving while I'm putting the torch to it. And make sure your flux and all those things are completely away from where your flame's going to be. Make sure there's nothing flammable around. This can be very dangerous if you mess up and don't do it correctly. And to be completely honest with you, it's not good to even have something like this around where you're doing it. But I've been doing this for so long, I mean, it'd probably be a good idea to tape this up just to be safe. But like I said, I've been doing this for so long, I ain't really worried about it. But it's a good idea to not have anything around that's flammable. Alright, this right here is a monster can with water in it. Once you have your wire soldered into the finger and everything, and it's soldered well and it's already cooled down enough to where it's not going to be pulling out, at that point you can go ahead and take it out of the vice grips and stick it down in some water and cool it down, because there's nothing beneficial for it to cool down slow or anything like that. You just want to make sure that it's cooled down enough for the solder to bond, or as some would say, freeze over, which, you know, that's kind of a double negative there. It ain't freezing, but you know what I mean. So alright, this is going to be a little tough for me to do since I don't have anything to hold this or anything like this. But basically I'm just going to go ahead and turn my torch on here. And I don't have to have this torch real high. Actually, I'm going to get it down about low as I can get it without turning it off. There you go, just about as low as I can get it without turning it off. Alright, I'm just going to sit it right there. It's on. I'm just going to sit it right there real quick. Alright, here's what I like to do. I like to take just a little piece of solder and put it into the finger. So that I will know when it's hot enough, because this solder will melt. I am doing this kind of one-handedly, but the solder will melt. So I'm just going to kind of face it this direction. And I like to put the flame at the very bottom of the finger. And if you ever do need to take the flame away for a second to do something, that's completely fine, because I mean, it's going to be so hot that you taking the flame away and putting it back on it's not going to make that big of a difference. But one of the main things when you're doing this is safety. You don't want to catch your dang house on fire or something. Now, I could have put this flame a little bit stronger than this, but since I see the solder just melted, since I am doing this one-handed while holding the phone. All right. At this point, I'm gonna try to hold the phone with my chin if I can. I'm gonna stick my wire in it. I don't know if you can see that or not. And I'll know when this starts to melt. Like I said, one good way of doing that. Here, I'm gonna go ahead and take the flame away from it for a second. Come over here and just get me a piece of solder. Alright, I'm gonna put the flame back on it. I don't know how good this is picking up, but I'm gonna take this solder and touch it at the very top of the wire right before the insulation starts. And if I can melt this solder there, I know the whole wire is hot enough, and it's hot enough to bond. There we go. See, now I know we are hot enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my big solder here and go ahead and top it off. Another thing I want to do is, once I get done, I'm waiting for it to cool down to make sure the wire, sorry I ran out of space, but like I was saying, once I've got it up to the top, you want to be careful not to get so much solder in it, like I said, that it's overfilling onto the finger or the flux is. Once I get it up to the top, you want to hold the wire up straight so that it cools down and bonds with the wire straight instead of crooked. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the vice grips. I'm going to stick it in this water right here and cool it down. And this is just so I can do this with speed. I ain't got to sit here and wait for it to cool down before I hit the next one. Actually, I learned this little trick right here from my buddy Mr. 999 999 from back in the days. Alright, so that right there is good and cool and warm temperature now. And it'll just dry off while I'm doing the next one. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get the next finger. Sitting here, this is pretty pitiful, having to hold the phone with my neck. You got it clamped. Also be real careful too, because that vice grip can get real warm on you. And that's another reason I kind of like to sit this heat sink right here on it, so the heat sink will kind of soak up a little bit of the warmth, so this won't get blistering hot on me. All right, so I'm gonna take my little bit of solder here. Y'all, please forgive me. I know this is okay. And after here, I'm gonna bend it down. After I get this one done, we'll snap on the Anderson connector, and we'll be done. All right. Our heat's still going. Now that is a little dangerous to keep a torch going like that while it's sitting upright, because you could accidentally knock it down and catch something on fire. That is very dangerous. Yes, it is. But I don't, you know, when you're doing a lot of these at once, I hate having to turn the torch back on and adjusting it. But if you just be mindful of what you're doing and stay alert, you'll be okay. You won't make stupid mistakes. See, now that's heated up that fast, that quick. All right, well, this one right here, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of this solder in there into the cup before I start, so I can tell that it could take a little bit more. Just a little bit. Alright, now I'm going to grab the wire. Yeah, be careful not to get that flame on the top, or it'll catch, the flux will catch fire like that right there. You see it? I don't know if you can see it or not. Alright, now I'm going to stick the wire in there. I did it a little bit too quick. You want to go in there real slow. You don't want to just push it in there like I just did, and the flux to come back, I mean the solder to come back up. Real slow. So this one might already be ready. I might not have to add any more. I might not have to add any more solder to this one. Yeah, see, this one's good. Since I added that little bit of solder, this one's ready to go. Just to be safe, I'll take a little bit of solder and touch the top. Look at that. I don't know if you can see it or not the way I'm holding the camera, but it's melting right at the top of the wire. I hope you can see this. I'm holding the wire straight so that it will cool down straight. I like to kind of just add a little bit of solder while it's cooling down. Not too much though, you know, to where it starts overfilling. But just to top it off. Alright, that's enough. It's going to start overfilling now. Hopefully y'all could see all that. I'm so sorry if you couldn't have. You know, at this point, if you had a little water sprayer, you could spray water on the bottom of it, the bottom, to let it cool down a little quicker, like this. But if you just be patient, or even if you had a little fan you had running or whatever, and you can tell when it gets cold enough because you'll notice the wire will quit moving around in it. It's still moving around just a little bit. This one got pretty hot. All right. This one should sizzle pretty good. After all these 3 or 4 years I've had this can out here, I can still smell just a tad bit of that monster in it. I mean, it's not monster. I drunk it and then washed it out real quick, but you can put this water in it, but you can still smell just a hint of monster whenever I steam it up like that. Ain't that funny? Alright, I just want to make sure to cool this one down real good because we're about to put the Anderson connectors on it. Make sure that's cold. So look at that. The wire is probably more warmer than that. Yep. Alright. Alright, and of course the first thing I'm going to want to do is get me some heat shrink and put some heat shrink on the wire to here. And see, this right here is an example of one that you did very well, and you did the heat and everything at perfect timing because it didn't eat away the insulation, meaning you didn't leave it in there so long that the insulation started melting and cracking, etc. And you know, ideally you don't have to leave this much wire like this, but just to be safe, it's better to have a little bit more than not enough gap right here. But I'm gonna go ahead and put a good piece of heat shrink on it. Since my flame's still running up right here, I will have some flame. All right, let's see if this heat shrink fits. Not quite big enough. Not quite big enough. So I'm gonna go over here to my big where I keep my big heat shrink at. Alrighty, here we go. Alright, this will be perfect. This will be perfect. Alright, give me 1 second. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this to size. Alright. Go ahead and heat up this heat shrink. Drop the phone. I can't wait to see if you can actually see what I'm doing holding this. I don't feel terrible if you can't. Dang. I'm just going to press pause and get this next one on here. Be right back. The way I like to do these right here, right on right, black on left. And the blue wire is the hot wire. So let's go ahead and take the blue wire. See where the little part I was talking about? Stick it to the red. And it snapped on in. Snapped on in. Let me go ahead and take the next one. See if I can't hike this phone up like that, so you can hear it. This is the black. Here to snap. And whoop. And she's done. So that's how you install an Anderson connector and I hope that it helps somebody out. I really do. Thanks a bunch. Mr. Gatekeeper set it out here in the northeast end of Georgia. Bye-bye.